All right, so this is Jerry Amernick, author of Babe Ruth, The Superstar's Legacy. I'm back with another interview in our Babe Ruth Legacy series, and today we have Tim Reid, who is a notable baseball historian and actually is an electronics engineer by trade, but his passion, I gather, is really being a baseball historian. Tim lives in Boca Raton, Florida, and is something of a Babe Ruth nut. Welcome to the Babe Ruth Legacy interviews.
Thank you, Jerry. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us first of all how you got involved in researching Babe Ruth, how it developed, and why it happened.
Well, originally, like most boys who grew up in my era, I was born in the mid-'50s. Babe Ruth was a Paul Bunyan type figure, of course.
Right.
Except he was real. He was just so powerful.
Yes.
But I was born in Brooklyn.
Right.
So it's taboo to be a Yankee fan.
Of course.
But I was at the age where I really didn't even get to see the Dodgers at Ebbets Field.
Yeah.
Has left, and no one I know that was a Dodger fan in Brooklyn became an LA Dodger fan. So a lot of my age group, if not all of them, because it was pre-Mets, became Yankee fans young.
Yes.
But really, even more than that, when I was a kid, we would hear pro-Dodger stories. You know, the Dodgers were so beloved in Brooklyn, as you know.
Yeah.
But I would get a caveat that although they hated, is not too strong a word sometimes, the Yankees.
Yeah.
They loved Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
They loved him. He connected with them.
Even if they weren't Yankee fans, they were all Babe Ruth fans. Yeah.
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 The reasons in your great book, how you explain it, Babe connected with people on a certain level. And one hardcore Dodger fan was my grandfather.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
He hated the Yankees.
Yeah.
But he took me aside one time when he saw I was playing Little League, and he told me, he goes, we got talking. He told me Babe Ruth, he goes, is the exception. This guy is the exception.
Right.
And he told me that he was basically an orphan himself, in the same sense that Ruth could be considered an orphan.
Yes.
In other words, parents became too poor to take care of him.
Right.
So to go to an institution for a portion of his childhood, almost the same kind of background.
Yeah, I did an interview last week, and one of the questions was what kind of childhood he had, and I said it was a childhood that you could take out of a Charles Dickens novel.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Yeah.
That's almost his greatest triumph, even more than hitting 500-foot home runs.
Right,
It's
right.
That background.
So you have done a lot of research on Babe Ruth, and especially with the spring training in Florida, is that right?
That's right, because when I was 9 years old, the way I remember was right after the Beatles.
Yeah.
To Shea Stadium. My family moved to Merritt Island, Florida, which is where Kennedy Space Center was.
Right.
Soon to be called Kennedy Space Center.
Right.
And that's where the manned shots went off down there. And my dad worked on the space program.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
And so it was a fascinating childhood. My dad was an exceptional athlete. And he was a coach in Brooklyn. In fact, he was Rico Petrocelli's football coach.
Oh, okay.
Well, Rico would be somebody followed. That's why I had a unique background, too, in that I rooted for both the Yankees and the Red Sox, oddly enough.
I did an interview with Rico Petrocelli back in January, I think it was. In fact, he and a colleague, Tom Zappala, have a radio show for the collectors industry, and they interviewed me. But this was before the book even was released. Yeah.
Well, my dad's team won the city football championship.
Oh, okay.
This kind of baseball world.
Yeah.
He won the city football championship with Rico as the quarterback.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Quite a deal then. They didn't have the high school teams like we have now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a different setup where you had the neighborhood teams.
Okay.
And also phenomenal, obviously baseball player, but basketball player as well. Sandy Koufax lived in that neighborhood.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So,
all right. Okay. So the things I want to get into with you are your research into first of all, the humanitarian side of Babe Ruth and all the charities and that he supported in Florida. We talked before when I interviewed you for my book when I was doing the research. Tell us a little bit about that, about Babe Ruth, the humanitarian.
Well, my cousin Bobby, who's also my best friend, lives in St. Petersburg, so I would often get over to St. Petersburg across the state.
Yes.
And came to love that, of course, because that was the hub of baseball. The Mets and the Yankees and the Cardinals,
right?
As you know, and so I would hear these stories about Babe Ruth, stories that have never made the press. Still,
yeah,
the things he would do for the community and the people there, not only a daily basis, on not even an hourly basis, like by the minute.
Yeah,
If you ran Babe Ruth, he was looking to help you. In whatever way he could, even if it was just to have a talk with you or have a beer with you or give you a baseball autograph. You know, he'd go out of his way, as busy a man as he was, at his peak.
Yeah.
This is at his when everybody's trying to get his time. So I grew up hearing about this, you know, and then I became, when I went to college at Manhattan College in New York, I would be a surveyor for the city summers. And so I got to know there was a famous field down there called Waterfront Park, which is later called Lang Field.
Yes.
Surveying headquarters was right next to it. So these surveyors were, a lot of them were avid baseball fans. They would see, they saw a lot of mutual, a lot of mutual. They really knew the baseball, but more importantly, they knew distances. You know, and for this story, they knew distances, and they had maps and everything. So they would map when Mantle or anybody, but it was mostly Mantle hitting the long ones in the 50s, of course.
You're going to get to the 611-foot home run here? Is that what it is?
Well, I'm getting there also, but they also had the stories about his charitable nature.
Yes.
And how he come and mix with the community.
Right.
And as I started, so that's how I got into baseball, is through learning about Babe Ruth's historic West Coast in-home run.
Right.
As I did that, Jerry, I would come across so many stories from people, legitimate, not fables, you know, well documented, obviously anecdotal, but documented stories. For instance, one of the famous families in St. Petersburg now is called the Mastery family. Yeah. They were poor, though, back in the 20s and 30s, and there was a fellow named Mike Mastery who passed away a couple of years ago in his 90s. Yeah. Mike Mastery told me a typical story. He was poor. He had to get money for his family, and he'd be down the field, chasing foul balls, home runs during practice, and whatever he could to get a baseball. And Babe Ruth was in town, so that's the autograph he really wanted. He could sell it. Yes. So what he was doing, he would get a ball from Babe Ruth, hits one out, let's say in practice. He would get it signed and sell it. And so one day he told Ruth, he came up and he told Ruth what he was saying. No, kid, that's not how you do it. You get the money, you go, I'll help you get the first box of balls. You go and you get a box of balls with that. And then come to me and I'll sign all the balls. Right. Right? Right. And so he did this for years. Right. Right? And then while I was to know Mike Mastery, he told me something I had heard years earlier when I was surveying, that he was there. Now remember, this wasn't in the papers. Yeah. That he says the best one ever was when Ruth hit the steps of the West Coast Inn Hotel. But anyway, so this is how I really was learning these two things at the same time: the power of hitting, the legitimate power, and these stories. He would go. He was down. He only was down there a couple months a year, you know. Right. So. But he would go and he'd pursue helping people. He'd see a story in a newspaper. Yeah. And these stories came to me, they didn't come, there's a lot of stories that made the paper. Yeah. But most of them did. For instance, he founded what's now the Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital down there.
Babe Ruth did. No.
The building originally was called the Crippled Hospital for Children. Okay. But that thing was originally Al Capone's building. Oh. It was a nightclub. And when the federal government took Capone's property down in St. Pete, Babe Ruth paid for that piece of property to be given to. Oh, I didn't know about that. Okay. Premier hospitals in the world.
Wow. So there was an article last year in the Northeast Journal that by Will Michaels, which is all about the humanitarian side of Babe Ruth. And you were involved somewhat in doing research for that article, were you?
Well, Will is one of the great, if not the great, St. Petersburg historian.
Yes. Yeah, he's written books about it. Yes.
So I mean, all the credit to his writing goes to that. But yes, I helped out with that, and that's the build. That's the culmination of a lot of research that was loose and not put together over the years, and it put it all together. Well, it does on a lower scale what your book does. It connects all the dots.
Yeah.
For people who's at some level, people know this guy Ruth was incredible.
Yeah.
And they know he was great and charitable and all this. They know he was powerful, but why? Why after 100 years is he still at that? Well, your book even does more of that. But Will's does it in connection to St. Petersburg.
Yes.
And he does extend how some of Babe's other activity, like with the opposing the Holocaust and that kind of thing.
Right. When he signed an ad, or his name to an ad in the newspaper. Yes. Yeah.
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 Right.
Now, Tim, when I interviewed you before for the book, you had mentioned to me that you said Ruth was a 24-hour charity machine, and that in St. Petersburg and around the whole state of Florida, where he was a seasonal resident for many years, he was involved with something like 70 different charities. Is that right? 70?
Yeah. When I dug in, I mean, if you can imagine every charity known nationally, he was involved in that way in Florida.
Yeah.
If you can, but then there's 50, 60 more, 70 that are local. And that's all I was able to think of. These are official, known organizations. This doesn't include, peripheral fringe groups. This is everybody from A to Z, American Legion to zoos.
Yeah, everything. It's incredible. So Tim, you were involved in the ceremony in 2008, where there was the marking the 60th anniversary of Ruth's death at St. Patrick's Cathedral, New York City, and there was quite a turnout for that event. Is that right?
Yeah, right in the middle of a superstorm. I think the name of it now, but it became with an H, and it didn't have it. It was a hurricane that ended up being a superstorm kind of thing in New York. But thousands showed up, and it was tremendous. It was covered by the New York Times.
Yeah. Why do you think all those people showed up for that?
They loved the guy.
Yeah.
This guy is beloved.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't think it's because he just, the fact that this man could hit a ball so far is phenomenal. But that's not what they.
There are other hitters and sluggers who are not so beloved, right?
Yeah. If you were a long jumper that jumped 35 foot back in the 20s, I don't think anybody'd be at his funeral. This man truly was, and he's often not, I won't say denigrated, but not credited properly for how intelligent he was.
Yeah.
The depth that a lot of people ridicule him because maybe he didn't study the Peloponnesian Wars or something.
But he only went to grade 7 or something, so. Right.
But he was intelligent. I mean, he transformed the game, and that's not an accident. I mean,
absolutely, yeah. So tell me about, you were involved in the committee to commemorate Babe Ruth, is that right? Tell us a little bit about that. What was that?
Well, two things were happening back at that time.
And this is in Florida, right?
It was actually in New York and Florida.
Okay, yeah.
And then people around the country got involved in their own way.
Right.
But there was a confluence of things going on. And what they were talking about tearing down Yankee Stadium and not leaving anything of it.
Right.
And at the same time, they were praising intelligent people knew these sluggers were cheating on using drugs, performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
Cheat. And Ruth was being sort of cast aside.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's so bad about this mostly is, adults can handle the cheaters themselves, the other ball players.
Yeah.
It was very unfair to guys like McGriff and all those people, in addition to Ruth, so it wasn't just a Ruth thing. But it was also fair to everybody down below because you could not make the majors unless you could meet those marks
Yes.
of the chief.
Yeah.
So it contaminated everything
Yes.
instantaneously.
Right.
So we tried to take the positive aspect of, hey, here's a guy, Ruth, and there were other people too, Fox, Mantle,
Yeah.
Greenberg, all
Yeah.
these guys, they did a ball a long way
Yeah.
without that stuff.
Right.
Why celebrate it? And so that became a part of our mission, Phil.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now you were also involved in a documentary, The First Boys of Spring, the documentary that was narrated by Billy Bob Thornton, right? Yeah. So how were you involved in that?
Well, this sprung out of this wonderful thing that a fellow named Steve Arison, who heads up the Visitors Bureau in Hot Springs, Arkansas, conceived with Bill Jenkinson.
Right.
Bill came into town. They hit it off, and they were simpatico on this town's history is amazing.
Yeah.
You see, since the 80s, it's where spring baseball basically began as an organized thing.
Right.
And all the greats, 50% of the Hall of Famers, played here.
Yeah.
So they made what they call a Hot Springs Baseball Trail, which has about 30 plaques throughout the town. It's just beautiful. And the town is cool.
Yeah.
It was the first national park, that town. So anyway, a great filmmaker named Larry Foley, who's the premier documentary maker in Hot Springs and a great baseball historian himself, who had just made several great movies, things in Arkansas, including Clinton, Walmart. He saw it. He wanted to do a documentary.
I see.
He's the head of the journalism department at the University of Arkansas.
So you were one of the consultants who were involved in that?
Yes, essentially a consultant.
Okay.
Yes.
I see.
And Bill, myself, I just like to say their names: Mike Dugan, Don Dern, and Mark Lauer. Mm-hmm. And Liz Robinson's at the historical side. These are the people. We formed a group, and we got it all done, and it's just one of those great things.
All right. So Tim, Babe Ruth obviously is known for hitting home runs, his pitching prowess earlier in his career, the character he was. I don't know that he's known so much for his philanthropy, and in my book I get into that. But is that because it wasn't really publicized, or what do you think the reason is?
Well, that's an excellent question. I mean, I think there's enough evidence. I think people know he would go to orphanages, right?
Yes.
But by philanthropy, as far as the knowledge that he actually gave money, I guess that isn't known. I guess it wasn't reported.
Or even just supporting charities, because I don't know that any other athlete during his time did it to the extent that he did.
That's a good point. He would also organize these. He did it in unique ways too. Like he'd play to help out black communities. He would play against.
Oh, the barnstorming. Yeah.
So that they would come in and make money. He did it. He would play with every time he played golf. He would turn he was a marketing genius.
Yes, he was for sure.
Yeah. He would not do anything unless, for instance, he would go to the women's club. There's a women's club in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
He'd show up for their big thing unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd buy like a cupcake for $100.
Right. Okay.
And and pass a hat so everybody else could contribute.
I see. Yeah.
$100 in those days was quite amazing.
No, absolutely, yeah.
But he would also stimulate in a fun way the interest in getting others.
So why do you think, and this is really the central theme of my book, the fact that he has endured for so long, it's 70 years after his death, and here he is, and to say endure probably doesn't even do him justice. Why do you think that has happened?
Well, I think because of where he came from. I think most Americans he wasn't an immigrant himself, of course, but came from immigrants, like most Americans in the cities back then, and maybe elsewhere. And he appealed to people on that level that he lived the American dream.
Rags to riches. Yeah.
But you brought out Charles Dickens. I mean, this is like a Charles Dickens character.
Yes.
Right? One day he's having the porridge, and the next day he's he's dining with kings, and he
Yes.
doesn't even know who kings are.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that appeal, but combined with his power and his phenomenal prowess, of course. But that's other people had that prowess. For instance, you could look at a Jack Johnson, a Jim Thorpe, these kind of people,
Yeah.
and they're still famous,
Yeah.
but they're not bold.
Yeah.
They're not bold. There's something in. I mean, people. You could look in his eye, and he never held a grudge. I mean, there were people who insulted him, were terrible to him. I mean, and he would work with them the next day. Cobb would insult him to no end. Then he'd work with Cobb the next day on charities.
Yeah.
You know, he did this with everything.
Well, you know, I've been at this doing Ruth research, I guess it's about 25 years now, and that's exactly what I have found. People who actually knew him themselves, and people who knew of him, or people with the Yankees organization, and it sounds incredible, but nobody really had a disparaging word to say about the guy. Oh, he may have been rough around the edges and so on, but just, you know, proverbial heart of gold kind of guy. That's what I seem to find everywhere.
Heart of gold, yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote a song for Babe Ruth, you know, and one of the lines is, he had the biggest bat and the biggest heart.
Yes, yes. Well,
Heart of gold is like, it doesn't fit anybody more than Babe Ruth, really.
I think it was a commissioner of baseball that said he had the world's biggest heart at one point. I remember a quote like that. Okay, so going back to the book. So you read the book. You're obviously interviewed in the book, and it is a little different in that it gets into the legacy of Ruth, which, you know, really, that's the reason I wrote it. I don't think that story had been told before.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think it was a brilliant concept, first of all, because what it really does, there's biographies out there. There are great biographies out there. But no one's pulled it together. I mean, you've answered the very questions you've answered me in this book, right? You pulled it together, all the different threads and all the different aspects of how Ruth, why he's still here, and the evidence that he is still here. There's people, and I think you mentioned somewhere along the line, maybe in an interview, that this is really true. If you buy a Babe Ruth ball right now, if someone has $40,000 to put a down payment on a house, or buy a Babe Ruth.
It'd be better to put it on the ball.
They should buy that big ball.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. In the sports collectibles business, which is a huge industry, as one executive told me, he said there's two categories: there's Babe Ruth and there's everyone else, and that's how it works. Yeah.
It's like Shakespeare's folios or Julius Caesar's saber or something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but it was Ruth's jersey from 1920-21 that sold for $4.4 million, which is still a Guinness World Record for any item of sports memorabilia. It's just remarkable.
I think I'll find out it was undervalued.
Yeah, well, it's worth more now, actually. Yeah, well, I spoke to the guy who bought it. He was an agent, and he bought it for his client. And I asked him last year, and he said that jersey would probably be worth $10 million now. So.
Absolutely. You see the same thing with these masters in paintings. He was like a Da Vinci, right?
He was an artist. He painted home runs.
That's right. Yeah. And in an American way. I mean, he epitomized, right, embodied America.
I think he did too. I think you're right. He did. Yeah. Well, I'm going to be. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that translates to other countries. But I mean, that's how we know him. And by the way, you're in Toronto.
Yes.
I mean, the people. If not for brother Matthias Boulier, would that be the correct pronunciation?
Martin Boulier. Yeah.
There'd be no Babe Ruth.
Well, he was a Canadian.
Yeah, right. I mean, he was the person. I mean, there's so much. Now, a guy like Ruth was smart enough, even as a kid, to know that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And this is the man I want to respect. I mean, think about how hard that is. I mean, as a kid, he was probably looking for a father figure.
Yes.
But he also was smart enough to know, wait a minute. You know, he grew up in the scientific game era. Mm-hmm. No one hit ones like that except Brother Matthias.
Yeah, right? And he called Brother Matthias the greatest man I've ever known. Yeah.
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 And he's known a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I mean, so he crosses the international border as he did with you. I mean, there's not really hardly a really international border between Canada and the U.S.
But also it gets into Japan and the Far East and, you know, the Caribbean and other countries around the world where you had major impact. Cuba?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In Hot Springs, the leading sports group, Sports Nippon it's called, sent a writer to the Hot Springs event from Japan.
Oh, yes.
And they have 2.1 million subscribers to this writer.
Right.
And world, and they were like just entranced by that. They were standing on the ground where Babe Ruth hit these home runs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, Tim, we're just about out of time, so I want to thank you for being part of the Babe Ruth Legacy series, and I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Jerry, thank you for writing this book. This is an important, and great book. Thank you. My pleasure to be on it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.